is and should be a touchdown. Here we go. Bryson Mars has got his back behind him. It is Jaquindon Jackson. Here's the snap. Bryson Barnes looking deep. He's got a man. It's caught! He's gone! Touchdown early!
Turn on microphone access. I don't know what is. Okay. Y'all can hear me now, right? Okay. So, got that fixed. We recently got an update with our computer system. So, that's why that. Okay. Can you hear me right now, Colton? Just put that in the chat if you can. We're working on this right now. Also, let me know if next video, if the brightness on this new light that I got, let me know if it is too bright. We can turn that down a little bit if it is too bright. So that's a new light that we've picked up. So, all right. But either way, we got a great show for you tonight. Working on getting my slideshow pulled up for you. Got a little sidetracked a little bit. But even though tonight we got some things to talk about. We're going to talk about Alabama and Wisconsin. We're going to talk about Georgia and Kentucky. We'll talk about Indiana, UCLA. We got our rankings to reveal here tonight. So, of course, that's going to be fun, revealing our rankings. So, we got a great show for you right here tonight. So, I'm going to get it pulled up. So, of course, there we go. There we go. Now I can show that to you right there. So let's go ahead and talk about. Oh yeah, I forgot Pac-12. There has been some interesting stuff going on within the Pac-12. Namely that there's the conference is coming back with the efforts of realignment. So of course it's interesting to kind of keep up with alignment and that kind of thing. So for the Pac-12 though, it's going to be very interesting. Now, if you remember me talking I think it was Saturday when I was talking about this, or it may have been last Thursday. But so the Pac-12 added Boise State, Colorado State, San Diego State, and Fresno State. I believe I've said that right. Either way, now of course they got to get a couple more members to join in, and here's where we're going to start predicting a little bit, because this is something that's going to be interesting to see. How do these teams line up within alignment and that kind of thing? So I'm going to look at this right quick. But so, okay, some reports have been saying that UNLV, UTSA are part of expansion. Gonzaga is a possibility for college basketball. Of course, all of this is just rumors right now, but what I want to do is give you who I think would be the best for the conference. First of all, I think the Pac-12 would be smart to go to Texas to get somebody. I think it's smart. You get that kind of field out. Like, you get the market out there, plus the talent that you can get from the state of Texas, because Texas has a lot of great athletes out there. So I feel like you go get a team in Texas, so that would be like a UTSA. And another team could be like Texas State. That could be interesting to see how that goes. Again, the Pac 12, they got a lot of money. They're not a power conference yet. Now, I told you I didn't think they were going to become one, but that just hinges on can they get enough teams that are good enough to be considered in a power conference situation. Um, so it's very interesting to see how this is gonna play out. Um, so like UTSA, Texas State, those are like two of the teams that I would be contacting. Um, I think some other teams, if you want to go even further east, I would go with like Tulane or Memphis. That would be interesting. You get the Memphis market, and then you could get the New Orleans market. That would be very interesting to see how that would work. And then if you just look at the general area, I could see the Pac-12 talking to Stanford and Cal, being like, "Hey, do you want to play regionally instead of having to travel across the country?" I could see the appeal there, but personally speaking, I just don't see a team like Stanford or Cal wanting to go back to the Pac-12 after how things ended. I just don't see it happening. So, um, so my predictions: they got to get at least two more schools. I think they get four. I think that's UTSA, Texas State, Tulane, Memphis. I think that's where they will go and get the teams that they need. So I think it makes it interesting. Very interesting indeed. Mountain West leaves them with 7 schools. What I think is going to happen with them, with the Mountain West, I think the most logical situation here is go to the Conference USA and pluck New Mexico State so that you can stay at conference. So, besides, you get that rivalry between New Mexico and New Mexico State. That'd be fun to watch if you're Mountain West. So, Mountain West most likely only add one school. Now, if you're the American, then or wait, no, I didn't say anything about the Mountain West. Either way, I can see the Mountain West getting New Mexico State anyway. But if you're the American, you're already looking at getting Air Force, which is an interesting look right there anyway, because Air Force is going to be very interesting to say the least. So the American likes the appeal of having all 3 of the service academy schools. That I think is pretty much going to happen. The Air Force will be joining the American. So, with that being said, well, then actually that keep that in mind that would mean that the Mountain West would have to add one more school to remain a conference. So, New Mexico State most likely is that team. So, that's interesting to talk about realignment. Of course, it can't happen through off season. It's got to happen right in the middle of the season to steal some of the headlines away. But let's go ahead and move on to our next topic, and that is Alabama and Wisconsin. Excuse me. So, all right, here we go. I'm going to pull up some stats here for you so that you get an idea of how this ball game went. But Alabama, and here's really, the stats, we're going to give it to you, but here's really the thing to take away from this. Tyler Van Dyke for Wisconsin, he goes down with an injury. That pretty much tells you most of what you have to know. So, you look at it. I'll just go ahead and give you the stats. I don't think it's relevant to this game, but we'll give it to you anyway. Alabama held the ball for 26 minutes, 3 seconds. Wisconsin, 33 minutes, 32 seconds. Total yards, Alabama 407, Wisconsin 290. Passing yards, Alabama 226 to 141. If you look at total yards on the ground, Alabama 181, Wisconsin 149. So I mean, and then Wisconsin fumbled the ball twice in this ball game. But the stats don't tell you the whole story. Alabama dominated this ball game this whole time. You really look at it. Alabama dominated the ball game. Tyler Van Dyke went out of the ball game on the first drive. So that right there derailed Wisconsin, and Milroe and Alabama just took over for the remainder of the game. Alabama, I think what you saw is classic Alabama form where they don't show up great against a USF team they should beat by 30, but they end up excuse me. Goodness. I have to cough all of a sudden. Either way. And then you see a team like Wisconsin who they just don't have the players to play with Alabama. That's just the bottom line. So that's really what I saw from this ball game. So not a lot to talk about. But right now, let's take a quick commercial break and we will come back. So we'll be right back, folks. All right, everybody. Okay, so I tried to fix the lighting again just to look at it. Gonna have to do a little bit more for that. We'll stick with this for the remainder of the show. So turning our attention now to Indiana UCLA. This is another game that I don't really have to give you the stats. I'll give it to you anyway. But let's just call it for what it is, okay? First off, the officiating in this game was kind of iffy, which was a lot of what you saw in college football this weekend anyway, was that the officiating was kind of just iffy at best. So there was a in the passer call that was really just, I thought it was a dumb call, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. And it was an Indiana defensive player hitting UCLA's quarterback, Ethan Garbers. I still think it was a dumb call, if we're all being honest. But it had no effect to the result of the game. So what was interesting, Indiana did have a defensive player thrown out for targeting, which, there was another play where a UCLA player could have been ejected for targeting as well, if you really look at it. So, their officiating to me was kind of 50-50. Like, I'm okay, but then there's some that's like, what are you even calling there? Kind of stupid. Indiana, though, they controlled this ball game. If you watched it here on our channel, you kind of figured that. Indiana was able to, pretty much every drive they had, was able to drive on UCLA and just score. UCLA, I mean, to put it nicely, they could not defend Indiana all night long. It was all Indiana all day long as far as they got to do it, every little thing they wanted to do. So, the one thing I would say, Indiana, I feel like their defense could have played just a tad bit better. But overall, Indiana played a very complete football game, and it was one that I would say Indiana was the better team. There's no doubt. But if we're going to turn our attention to some of the stats from the game, Indiana, as far as, let's see, total yards 430 to 238. Through the air, they threw their 307 to 142, Indiana. And then on the ground, 123 to 96, Indiana. UCLA turned the ball over twice. Indiana kept the ball for 31 minutes, 34 seconds. UCLA 28 minutes, 26 seconds. Overall, like I said, Indiana was just the better team, and there's no other way to slice it other than that. Indiana was the better team. And so I will say this right now, and this will be probably the only time I say this, but I think personally, Indiana, if they play this way the whole season, they're going to be a team that you're not going to want to play. That's just me being honest with you. They could be honestly really interesting, especially when you got to consider that a team like Nebraska has been looking really good, has a lot of hype this season. It's going to be interesting to see them go against a team like Indiana, who Indiana's looked pretty good. Kirk Cinetti, you got to give him credit. He's a good coach, and he's doing a great job at Indiana. So let me see if I have a picture yet. Okay. I failed to get a picture of Georgia and Kentucky, but we're going to talk about it. So, Georgia and Kentucky, it was a interesting ball game. It was a slugfest. Georgia's offense did not look great. They had trouble moving the ball in the first half. But yeah, let's look at these stats. First downs, Kentucky 23 to 12. Look at third down efficiency. Kentucky 9 to 16. Georgia 5 to 13. Total yards in this ball game. Kentucky 284. Georgia 262. Excuse me. So the passing yards, Georgia 160 to 114 to Kentucky. And then you look at run game, Kentucky 170 to 102. If you're Georgia, and I mean, you're going to see here in a minute in the rankings, how things are looking for us here at the channel. But Georgia barely had, compared to Kentucky, they barely had the football. They committed a lot of penalties, but yet they found a way to win the game. I think if you're Georgia, and you got to go back to that last drive, they weren't able to go score, but they ended up, I believe, punted the football, gave it to Kentucky, and then Kentucky couldn't move up the field because they barely had any time at all. And Georgia's defense, in the end, won the game. I think if you're Georgia, this shows that you can win a bunch of different ways. And as I said, this was a slugfest. This was not a game that you would have thought Kentucky would have trouble with. But you got to give Kentucky credit. They played hard at home, and that's what good SEC football is, or in general, good college football is. So Georgia comes out with the win. It was about their defense winning this ball game for them, and not so much their offense, because their offense did not play their best game. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about that. So now, we are turning our attention to the SBN poll. And this is the part of the show that I think a lot of people really love about our show here. So, without a doubt, here is our top 25. All right. So, as you see right here, our SBN poll right now, we still have the top 15 from last week. No change in it. Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, Miami, Tennessee, Oregon, Oklahoma, Alabama, Missouri, Ole Miss, USC, Penn State, Utah, Louisville, Kansas State. But because of Arizona getting destroyed by Kansas State, they move down to 25, and everyone else behind them moves up one spot. So nobody drops out of the rankings. Nobody enters the rankings. That is the way that we had it this week. But do keep in mind, there are quite a few ranked matchups within our rankings here. And we're going to talk about that later on Saturday. But first off, you got to USC and Michigan, what should be an incredible football game. I mean, you got some incredible football. So, but okay, first off though, you got to start with Friday night. You have in the AP, it's a ranked matchup here at Saber Broadcast Network. It's one team is ranked and one team's not. Illinois, Nebraska, that's going to be a really fun football game. If you are a football junkie, that's tomorrow night, 7 o'clock on Fox. That's going to be a lot of fun if you want to watch that one. You look, here is, so if you look at some other games that's going to be interesting this week, I mean, USC Michigan's going to be interesting. Utah and Oklahoma State. So, I mean, Tennessee and Oklahoma. I failed to mention that one. Tennessee and Oklahoma is going to be very fun. And there's a bunch of other games that'll be really good this week. But those are some to mention. But, of course, that is who we have in our rankings. So now it's time for me to pretty much announce who we will have this Saturday as far as our game broadcast. And that will be, we got USC Michigan here on the channel. Can't do a primetime game. I got something going on late on Saturday night. So be able to do USC Michigan. It's going to be a whole lot of fun, folks. You do not want to miss it. You want to be here on Saber Broadcast Network. Also, college football wraparound for our pregame coverage begins at 10 a.m. Saturday morning. So that goes for normally like a 30-minute to 1 hour program on Saturday morning. And then we do the entirety of a football game, whether it be on a Thursday night, Friday night, or Saturday afternoon or Saturday night. We will be doing some football here on the channel. So with that, without a doubt, folks, it's a little bit shorter. I am kind of getting over a cold. That's why we didn't do a show last night. So kind of just didn't feel like getting on the air last night. So my apologies for the coughing. But of course, thank y'all for watching tonight's show, and we will see you again later. Good night, everybody.